The building shimmered like a dream, polished glass reflecting a soft golden hue as the evening sun dipped low. Spotlights roamed across a deep navy sky. Elegant black cars lined the entrance, and inside, I knew, 100 suits and cocktail dresses swirled around polished marble floors and champagne fountains. This gala was supposed to be mine, my company's annual celebration, my name on the placards, my speech echoing under chandeliers I helped afford. At home, I'd spent the last 2 hours pacing, practicing lines, fixing the hem of my navy blue gown. It was the same one I'd worn during our first investor pitch years ago. Seemed fitting. Full circle, I thought. I'd rehearsed my speech until the words felt carved into my tongue. The moment I had waited for, years of saving this company from ruin, putting in 20-hour days, sacrificing holidays, relationships, everything, was finally going to be acknowledged. I sent Mom a message earlier. See you soon? Hope you're proud. No reply. Typical. I didn't think too hard about it. I had flashbacks as I locked the door behind me. Sleepless nights buried in spreadsheets. Pitch decks sent at 3 a.m. That got us our first big partner. My hands shook slightly as I adjusted the clasp on my bag. Tonight, I was ready to be recognized. But that's not what happened. When I stepped out of the car, the cold hit me. Not from the weather, but the way security stepped in my path. "Ma'am, your name's not on the list," one of them said. I blinked. "Excuse me?" He double-checked his clipboard. "You're not on the guest list. I'm going to have to ask you to stand aside." I laughed a little, nervously. "There's no mistake. I'm one of the founders. I wrote the check for the down payment on this building." He didn't flinch. "Please wait over there." I called Dad, straight to voicemail. Then Mom. Nothing. Finally, I messaged my assistant. "What's going on?" A staff member I vaguely recognized, someone from HR, I think, approached hesitantly. "I'm so sorry. The family changed the plan last minute. I think it's just more of a family-only thing now." My mouth went dry. Family only. And then they arrived. Camera flashes burst like fireworks. The crowd buzzed. My brother stepped out first, tall and smug in a custom tux. My parents followed, waving like celebrities. Someone announced, "Please welcome the founding family of Sinclair Ventures." Founding family. Not a single mention of me. I stood there, 5 feet from the red carpet, invisible. My name wasn't called, my contributions erased, my chest tightened. People looked at me like I didn't belong, like I was an intruder at my own celebration. Inside, a slideshow played. I could see it from the lobby screen. Photos of my brother shaking hands, smiling with investors, pointing at whiteboards filled with strategies I had drawn up. Every image, he was the star. I was airbrushed out of my own legacy. I moved to the side, out of sight. A wave of nausea hit me. A line from my grandmother rang in my head. "Some betrayals don't need knives, just silence." My phone buzzed with another ignored call. I turned and saw Mom, briefly, across the atrium. She looked at me, then looked away. I kicked off my heels, barefoot on the cold tile, and walked out. Then I heard him. In a corridor by the side entrance, my father's voice echoed. I stopped. "She thinks we still need her. It's cleaner this way," he said, laughing. A pause. "The investors wanted someone more presentable, male. You know how these things are." My legs trembled. I should have left, but I stayed, listening. He kept talking about moving forward, about how I was too emotional in meetings. That was when something broke, not loud, not screaming, just something inside that quietly cracked. I turned away, swallowed back the tears that burned. My face went hard, blank. "If they want war," I whispered, "they'll get it." I pushed the doors open, but didn't get far. The host, a man I'd known since childhood, followed me out. "Hey," he said softly. "You're not crazy. They pulled your name last night, rewrote the whole thing." I stared at him. No words came out. He reached into his coat and handed me a USB stick. "They wiped everything, but I saved a backup. Thought you might want it." My hand trembled as I took it. "You built this place," he said. "Some of us remember." I looked up at him. He gave me a nod, then walked back inside. I stood alone under the buzzing street lamp. Anger, betrayal, but also clarity. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't cry either. I planned. I woke up on the couch, not in my bed. My neck ached from the angle I'd passed out in. My dress, still wrinkled, streaked with last night's shame, was clinging to me like a ghost I hadn't shaken off. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that wasn't peace, just the absence of comfort. The USB sat on the coffee table, plugged into my laptop. The video kept playing, looping, my voice in presentations, my hands sketching expansion plans on whiteboards, me at our first ribbon cutting, standing off to the side while my brother took center stage. I'd watched it so many times I started mouthing the words. I used to think, family doesn't backstab. I thought being the eldest meant something, that late nights, cleaning up their debt, funding their second and third chances, that it all counted for something. Turns out, it didn't. I looked over at the old leather-bound planner I'd filled years ago with projections, rollouts, partnerships I'd scouted myself. That was back when I thought family business meant shared vision. They'd taken every line, every bullet point, and just handed it to Keaton like he'd drawn it up over coffee. No more waiting, no more believing they'd come around. I wasn't going to be a footnote in the company I gave up my 20s for. I sat there thinking about the garage, where it started. We had folding tables. I brought my own monitor from college. We didn't even have central air. I taught myself to code in those late hours while Mom balanced checkbooks and Dad tried to charm potential partners on LinkedIn. Keaton was still finishing undergrad. I was the one who turned down a job at a top firm because Dad said, "You're the backbone here. Stay. We'll build it as a family." I was the one who cleaned up the first big client mess, the one who calmed angry investors when the numbers didn't look good. And when taxes threatened to bury us, I signed over part of my equity. "Just a temporary tax play," Dad had said. I believed him. I also signed my name on the loan for that second location, using my apartment as collateral. I didn't even blink. "You're not the face," he'd tell me. "You're the force behind the curtain." Guess that curtain was too convenient to pull shut. I needed air. I opened my laptop, planning to pull some old emails, financials, whatever I could start building with. Access denied. At first, I thought it was a glitch. I tried again, password reset, then again. I picked up the phone and called Cassie, the receptionist I'd mentored since she was 19. "Verity?" she answered, voice awkward. "Hey, I can't log in. Is it doing some update?" There was a pause. I thought you knew. They moved my role under strategic partnerships, Keaton's team." "What?" "I don't even sit on the same floor anymore." I thanked her, hung up, and pulled up the company site. My name was gone from the board of directors. No executive profile. My bio, deleted. Then I dug through old files and found it. A memo from 6 months ago, stating all decisions must be co-signed by Keaton and my father. No mention of me. This wasn't panic. It was precision. They hadn't just pushed me out. They'd laid the groundwork bit by bit. While I was still showing up to work with donuts for the interns, my heart didn't race. It slowed. That kind of quiet rage is different. It settles in your bones. They didn't just remove me. They erased me. I needed someone who could help me draw the line. So I called Tamsin. She met me at Grady's diner, neutral ground. We sat in a booth near the back. She ordered coffee and eggs. I didn't order anything. She plugged in the USB, watching the clips with the kind of calm only lawyers can hold. Then she shook her head. "They used your original pitch deck," she said, tapping the screen. "And this architecture schema? That's yours, from your notebook, right?" I nodded. "If they used this after they locked you out, they handed us a loaded gun." I stayed quiet. "This could go public," she added. "Depositions, injunctions, everything." I didn't hesitate about fighting, but dragging my own family through that mud, it was a different kind of ugly. "Tamsin, if this explodes, it'll be all over the papers. They'll paint me bitter, emotional." "They've already painted you out," she said. "You've been the glue in that place for too long." But glue dries. Cracks show. She was right. We made a plan to gather more. Wait. Watch. Strike when they'd least expect it. I used to believe legacy was inherited. That day, I realized it had to be earned back. Piece by piece. There was a kind of silence in my family that didn't scream, didn't slam doors, didn't leave bruises. It trained you, taught you how to shrink yourself without asking questions. That kind of silence doesn't explode. It seeps in slow, like water under a floorboard. You don't see the damage until everything creaks. Growing up, emotions were currency we weren't allowed to spend. Crying made you dramatic. Speaking up meant you were ungrateful. I learned early that silence kept the peace, or at least kept me from being labeled the problem. 3 nights after the gala, I sat on the couch staring out the window, lights off, phone in hand. One message popped up. From her. My mother. Just 2 words. Let's talk. That was it. After everything. Not, I'm sorry. Not, how are you? Not even an emoji. Just a blank, cold summons like I was late to a meeting. I didn't answer. I didn't even blink. I just opened our old texts. Birthday wishes she ignored. Invitations she ghosted. And the photos I sent every Christmas morning, never liked, never opened. I sat there, scrolling through years of one-way affection, like it was some digital museum of my own foolishness. I used to organize every birthday party, send gifts with handwritten notes, fly in for reunions. Hell, I paid for half of them. No one remembered that. No one ever said thank you. They just showed up, smiled, and called it family. The truth hit me sideways. The betrayal didn't start at that gala. It started years ago, in every unanswered text, every ignored effort, every time I poured in and got nothing back. The next day, I started cleaning out my closet, not out of some symbolic need to declutter, but because I needed to do something with my hands before I broke something. In the back corner, behind a stack of old legal pads, I found a little tin box I hadn't seen in years. The lock had rusted off. Inside was a pink journal. Worn edges, stickers peeling off, that cheap glitter kind that rubs off on your fingers. I opened it, and there I was, 12 years old and full of delusion, page after page of dreams about starting a family business. One day, we'll build something that changes the world, I'd written in block letters. We'll be rich together. On one page, I'd even drawn up a contract in crayon. 4 lines for signatures, only 1 signed. Mine. That image burned. I'd signed up for a future no one else wanted, a silent pact with myself, and I kept holding on to it like it was sacred. I turned a few more pages. There it was, a story about helping Keaton cheat on a math test. He promised he owed me big, I'd written, like I was proud of being useful. He repaid that debt with 2 decades of indifference. I sat on the floor, back against the closet door, holding that journal like it could tell me why I kept doing this. Why I kept giving first, always. Always hoping that someone would finally give back without me asking. That evening, my phone buzzed again. My father this time. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. His voice was soft, almost warm, like he was trying to put me to sleep. I know this seems harsh, sweetheart, but it's for the best. You've always needed space. This might be what helps you grow. You'll thank us later. I played it twice. Then again. The words didn't sting. It was how gentle he made the knife feel. That was the real trick. Wrap abandonment in wisdom. Sell it like concern. I texted Tamsin. Can love exist if it's only ever weaponized? She answered fast. Guilt is the favorite language of the entitled. I stared at the screen. Maybe I wasn't erased. Maybe I was never seen in the first place. By morning, I knew I had to get out of the house. I threw a few things in a bag, the journal, the USB, my laptop, 2 old photos. One of them was from our company's launch. I was off to the side, cropped in by accident. The other was from a childhood trip, same positioning, me holding the flashlight so everyone else could smile. I drove to the lake, a small Airbnb I'd used years ago for writing retreats. The roads were familiar, the silence hit different. Out here, no one expected anything from me. Not even a reply. I unpacked, laid out the photos on the kitchen table, sat in the wooden chair, and just stared. That's when I started writing. Letters to the girl I used to be. Some short, just a line. Others long and gutted. "You tried," one read. "That was never wrong." Each morning, same ritual. Coffee, then a letter. I wasn't documenting a betrayal. I was rebuilding a woman. I stopped thinking about fighting them for the company, for my name. They'd stolen it already. What I needed now wasn't revenge. It was reinvention. Not to win, to be undeniable. I stood at the window that night, watching the moon drag its light across the lake, my fingers pressed against the cool glass. "They wanted me gone," I said out loud. "I'll make it impossible to forget me." You can forgive a thief for stealing your money, but when they steal your name, you go to war. I returned to the gala hall 2 days later, under gray morning light. The building stood still, windows dark, silence heavy. I walked its corridors, the same ones I once strode with pride, now feeling like someone else's stage. The red carpet lay in folds, dim lighting casting long shadows. The posters I once posed for had been replaced. My brother's face stared back at me from every frame. I walked to the plaque wall where the founders' names were engraved in brass. My name was gone, no trace left, just polished metal where I once stood. A security guard passed, glanced my badge, then dismissed me as a caterer before moving on. My heart pounded with a heat I hadn't felt in years. This was irreversible. They had publicly erased me. Later that evening, the press event commenced in the same hall I used to call mine. I slipped in quietly, sticking to the shadows near the back. The MC took the stage, voice warm, practiced. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our co-founder, Mr. Keaton Draven," he began. Applause broke out. Eyes flicked toward me. Then he smiled, looking out over the room, and added, "And let's not forget that creative assistant from earlier years who helped behind the scenes." I felt a flame in my chest. That phrase, creative assistant, dressed as praise, but full of dismissal. Guests laughed, some shifting uncomfortably. Cameras flashed. My face burned. I stood in the back, invisible, burning from the insult. The MC's tone echoed inside me, mocking. That moment crystallized the public dismissal. I was no longer a founder, no longer a partner. They wanted me a secondary ghost role. My rage hardened. I am not assistant. I am architect. 2 nights later, the non-profit gala arranged by our company played out in the same venue, under crystal chandeliers, now devoid of my name. As guests gathered, I caught sight of the glossy program in someone's hand and asked for one. I skimmed the page. There it was. Keaton Draven, founding partner. Below, in smaller font, V. Draven, support staff. I stared at it. A staffer hovered nearby and offered, "Oh, that must be a typo, Ms. Draven. I'll get it fixed." Her voice shook, not because she believed me, but because she knew better than to believe me. But the damage was done. Guests whispered. Eyes glanced sideways. Humiliation poured over me like acid. I folded the program, tucked it in my bag, and left before they began the speeches. I went upstairs to my mother's office. The door was ajar. She looked up, cool, composed. "Verity," she said, almost kindly, "you shouldn't be here during the program." I placed the program on her desk. "Support staff?" She didn't flinch. "It's semantics. Titles don't matter in the grand scheme." I met her eyes, my voice low. "You let them take my name off the plaque. You let them circulate this booklet. You changed everything about me. And now you say titles don't matter?" Her expression flickered. She inhaled. "You always overreact. This is blown out of proportion." I laughed, short, brittle. "Out of proportion. You erased me." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "You have to stop being so sensitive," she said, turning back to her work. I left before she could respond. The halls felt hollow, lights buzzing overhead. In the car, I sat in silence. I pulled out the booklet and the USB from my bag. Images glowed on my screen. Blueprints, emails, design files. My fingerprints in every document. I whispered, "They can erase my name publicly, but they can't erase what I built." I tucked the booklet, planning my first strike. A week had passed since I found my name missing from the plaque. The humiliation had turned into something sharper, clearer. I'd stopped waiting for anyone to fix it. That's when his email arrived. Subject line: "Let's reset." My father never used words like reset. He preferred review, restructure, or redirect. Words with authority, not compromise. But that subject line was calculated: polite, corporate, hollow. The message itself read like a business memo. "Let's meet for coffee and talk things through. It's time to move forward, not backward." He'd even signed it, "Warm regards, RD, not Dad." I showed it to Tamsin over lunch. She glanced at it once and shook her head. "That's not an olive branch," she said. "That's bait. Even lions roar before they pounce. Go if you must, but don't go unarmed." I agreed. I wasn't looking for reconciliation. I wanted to hear what mask he'd wear this time. The place he suggested, a cafe downtown we'd visited after company meetings years ago, felt too deliberate, public, polished, safe for him. But I went anyway. The cafe hadn't changed much. Same glass windows, same soft jazz, same stale smell of burned espresso. I sat near the back, facing the door, because I wanted to see him before he saw me. People often mistake a calm voice for kindness, especially men who've made careers off the illusion. When he arrived, he smiled that politician's smile I'd seen 1,000 times, a handshake that lingered too long, a tone too measured to be sincere. "Verity," he said, sitting across from me. "It's good to see you." "You could have called," I said. "This felt more appropriate," he replied, gesturing for coffee. Then, skipping all courtesy, he opened his briefcase and placed a folder on the table. "I'll get straight to it." Of course he would. Small talk was for people he respected. "I'd like to offer you a consulting position," he began, voice smooth, rehearsed. "It's a symbolic role, really. We'd pay you well. You'd represent the family, attend the right events, keep the Draven legacy intact. Optics matter, you know." He looked up, gauging my reaction. I said nothing. "Keaton is leading well," he continued. "He's better suited for the public role. You've always been the creative one, passionate, emotional. But this keeps harmony, keeps the peace." He slid another paper forward. An NDA, followed by a pre-written consulting contract. It reeked of staged compassion. "Generous offer," he said lightly. "Enough to move on comfortably." I picked it up. Read every word. His voice filled the silence between us, explaining how this was for family unity, how everyone wins. Then I folded the document, set it in the small ceramic ashtray between us, and struck a match. The paper caught slow, curling at the edges, smoke rising steady and blue. His eyes widened, not with anger, but disbelief. "What are you doing?" "Ending the conversation," I said. "That's childish." "No," I said, steady now. "That's clarity." The waitress glanced over but said nothing. She'd seen worse, probably. He leaned back, smirking. "You always let emotions lead. It's why Keaton's where he is and you're here." I met his eyes. "I'm not your consultant, and I'm not your mistake. I'm the co-founder, and you know it." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "You'll ruin your name, Verity." "Then I'll build another one," I said, "and it'll outshine yours." The words landed heavier than I expected. For a moment, he stopped smiling, just stared. Then quietly, "You have no idea what you're starting." "I do," I said, standing. "And that's what scares you." I left before the smoke cleared. In the parking lot, I sat behind the wheel, gripping the steering wheel until my hands steadied. My pulse slowed, but the heat stayed. That wasn't fear, it was ignition. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. I went straight to the old file cabinet, the one holding everything they'd taken credit for. I found the flash drive labeled Blueprint V1, Expansion, plugged it in. There it was, the original draft of the design they were now promoting as Keaton's vision. I'd written it 3 years ago. Every layout, every detail carried my signature patterns. I zoomed in on the bottom corner. My watermark, faint but visible. VD. They hadn't even bothered to erase it. My throat tightened, not from sadness, but from recognition. Proof. I printed a copy. The ink spread clean across the page, my mark shining back at me like a quiet promise. I framed it and set it on my desk, next to the dead orchid I'd stopped watering after the gala. I whispered to the empty room. Let's reset. No. Let's reveal. The house was silent, except for the hum of the air vent. Outside, traffic murmured like a slow drumbeat. They drew the line thinking I wouldn't cross it. This time, I'm not walking. I'm marching. The morning light came through my office blinds in thin, sharp lines. I hadn't slept much since that meeting with my father. The calm that followed wasn't peace. It was pressure before the quake. Tamsin called that afternoon and told me to bring everything. So I did. Every USB, every printed email, every design file with my watermark still intact. Her office smelled like paper and burnt coffee. She was already behind her desk when I walked in, sleeves rolled up, focus absolute. Close the door, she said. We spread everything across the table, dozens of pages, digital timestamps, meeting notes. I held the blueprint last. It still carried my handwriting from years ago, and for a second, I remembered the nights I'd worked on it, when this all meant something clean. Tamsin didn't speak until she'd read through the financial summaries twice. Then she sighed. They're going to use money, she said. That's the easiest way to bury someone respectable. She pointed at one of the documents. See this? Transfers under your authorization code. They'll argue you misused funds. I stared at it. But that's impossible. I never signed anything. That's the point, she replied. It won't matter what's real. It's about what looks real. The air felt heavy. I sat back, crossing my arms. So they're setting the stage. Tamsin nodded. They made you legally liable. Now we make them legally accountable. We decided to start tracing the transactions, every cent, every suspicious movement under my name. The room fell quiet except for the sound of her typing. Outside, dusk crawled up the skyline, turning Houston into a grid of gold and shadow. As I drove home later, I kept repeating her words in my head. Accountable. It sounded cleaner than revenge, but it meant the same thing. The next day, my phone buzzed before sunrise. Tamsin's message was short. Get here now. I threw on jeans, grabbed coffee on the way, and drove straight to her office. She met me at the door, jaw tight. They moved money, she said. I followed her to the conference table. On the screen were bank records and signatures, mine apparently, authorizing a $3 million transfer from the company's expansion fund. The transaction was 6 months old, marked as a defaulted loan. What is this? I asked. Her tone was dry, clinical. A ghost account. The funds were routed into a shell company tied to Keaton's development group. My heart sank. They're making it look like I stole from my own company. Tamsin's expression hardened. They built a trap, Verity, and they put your name in the cage. I pressed my palms against the table, the anger sharp enough to sting. Then let's burn the cage. She looked at me for a moment, then gave a small nod. We will. That night, the weight of it settled in. I sat in front of my computer at home, eyes on the screen, scrolling through hundreds of files. Every transfer, every signature, they'd rewritten history pixel by pixel. But if they thought I'd fold under their narrative, they hadn't been paying attention. By the third day, we had a plan. Tamsin filed a restraining order and began preparing a temporary injunction to freeze assets under my digital ID. In the meantime, I called Jasper Monroe. He picked up on the second ring. Verity, he said, cautious but kind. I need backing, I told him. Quietly. There was a pause. If what you're saying is true, you'll have it, but you'd better make this count. I intend to. After that call, I reached out to Ellen Price, an old board member who used to mentor me when I first joined. She'd heard the whispers. They're saying you misused company funds, she said. I laughed softly, without humor. Of course they are. It's the oldest play in the book. She hesitated, then said, You were the sharpest one in the room, Verity. Don't let them make you small. When I hung up, the exhaustion hit me, but under it was clarity. I drafted a statement that night. I did not authorize any financial transfers. Any record suggesting otherwise is falsified. I sent it to a few trusted media contacts and told them to hold it. The timing wasn't right yet. The next morning, the attack came. At exactly noon, Draven Industries released a press statement, signed by my father and Keaton. It accused me of gross misconduct, unauthorized financial activities, and endangering corporate integrity. They called it part of a restructuring process. I read it twice, then once more out loud, just to hear the absurdity. Within an hour, my phone was chaos. Calls from journalists, old colleagues, people pretending to check in but just wanting gossip. Investors were pulling out. My name was being dragged through headlines, my photo splashed across business blogs. I drove downtown again, needing to see it, to look this monster in the face. The Houston Chronicle building loomed ahead, its glass reflecting the city lights and my own blurred reflection. Tamsin met me outside, holding a folder. Her eyes were steady. "They overplayed," she said. "They're scared. They'll have to overcorrect. And when they do, that's when we hit back," I finished. She nodded. The noise of the city seemed to fade for a moment. I could hear only my own breathing. The anger had burned itself into something colder. Focus. "They think I'll crawl away," I said quietly. "They think shame will silence me." Tamsin looked at me, her expression unreadable. I shook my head. "No. This isn't about my name anymore. It's about survival. Because they framed me as the criminal. But they forgot. Someone has to see the frame before it can hold. And I'll make sure the whole world does." It started quietly, the kind of silence that makes you check over your shoulder without knowing why. People moved differently in the halls, eyes low, words half-spoken. Conversations ended when I turned the corner. Even the junior staff who used to greet me with nervous smiles avoided eye contact. Something had shifted. The air inside the headquarters carried tension, the kind that doesn't come from workload, but from fear. I noticed new badges on security guards, new faces at reception. The elevator code that used to open the top floor now required an override. Every small change whispered one thing: they were preparing for a confrontation. That evening, as I reviewed files at home, my phone buzzed. An email. No greeting, no signature. Just 4 words. "I need to see you." From Marisol, my mother. I stared at the screen for a long time before I moved. I took the framed blueprint from my shelf, the one that still bore my signature watermark, and slid it into my leather case along with the misprinted project booklet, the one they'd released without my name. By the time I reached the office, it was close to midnight. The parking lot was half lit, empty except for a single black SUV idling near the loading bay. The glass doors opened slower than usual, like the building itself was hesitating to let me in. Inside, cameras had been repositioned. I could feel them following me down the hallway. My footsteps echoed in the quiet, steady but too loud. When the elevator doors opened to the top floor, Marisol was standing there, calm and cold, her expression unreadable. "You came," she said softly. "I got your message," I answered. "You wanted to talk?" She gestured toward her office. "Not here." I followed her inside, closing the door behind me. The same familiar scent of cedar polish filled the room. I set the booklet on her desk, along with a folder of surveillance screenshots. "You knew about this," I said. Her gaze fell to the papers, then to me. "I knew," she said after a pause. "I told him it would come back to hurt you." I waited. "And?" Her voice was tired. "He said it was a branding decision, that it was cleaner without a personal name attached." I swallowed. "And you just let him?" She sighed. "You don't understand. Fighting him would have made things worse." "No," I said, leaning forward. "You don't understand. Silence is the fight you chose." Her eyes glistened. "You've always been so stubborn. I thought you'd move on, start something new." I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't look away. "You didn't defend me. You just watched." Her lips trembled, but she said nothing more. There was no apology, only a quiet sadness that felt like pity. I turned toward the door. "You helped them erase me," I said. "I won't forget that." Walking out of that room felt heavier than any courtroom I'd ever entered. Betrayal from blood cuts deeper. It reshapes who you are. Hours later, back at home, I sat at my desk surrounded by dim light and paper stacks. I opened my laptop and replayed the gala footage, the night I was supposed to announce the next phase of the company. My voice filled the room, steady, proud. Then suddenly, the video glitched. The feed cut mid-sentence. When it resumed, Keaton was already on stage, smiling, taking credit. I paused, replayed. Same break, same edit. I checked the data logs. The file had been accessed 2 days after the event. The backup copy, missing. Deleted. Someone had gone in, cut me out of my own history. I stared at the frozen frame on my screen. This wasn't just manipulation, it was control. They weren't deleting a file, they were rewriting memory. I forwarded the footage to Tamsin with a single note. They doctored it. We'll need subpoenas. Then I called Jasper Monroe. He answered on the second ring, his voice gravelly with sleep. I found proof, I said. They edited the gala footage. I have metadata. Backups are gone. He was quiet for a moment. If you can authenticate it, I'll go to the press myself. I can, I said. And I will. The next day, I drove across town to meet Ellen, one of the few board members who still picked up my calls. She looked nervous but resolute. After I showed her the edited clip, she whispered, "They think no one notices, but I'll raise this in the next board session." "That's all I need," I told her. "Just a question on the record." By evening, Tamsin had the injunction paperwork drafted. "We'll subpoena the servers," she said. "Digital integrity violations. They'll have to respond." Everything was falling into place. Quietly, carefully. At dusk, I sat in my study, phone in hand, staring at the statement I'd written but never sent. Finally, I hit record on the voice memo app. And my reflections stared back from the black screen. "You can remove a person from your stage," I said, steady and clear, "but you can't erase the script they wrote. The truth always leaves copies." I ended the recording, titled it Tipping Point MP4, and sent it to my private drive. Then I leaned back, the weight of the day pressing down but not crushing. Somewhere between exhaustion and resolve, I found clarity. They rewrote history. But I'll make them publish the original version. And when I do, everyone will see. The night shimmered with too much light. From the curb outside the Houston Convention Center, I could see the cameras flashing like fireflies on adrenaline. Every major outlet was here, dressed in tuxedos and rented grace. The same venue where I had once been escorted out. Now I was walking back in. I adjusted the cuff of my jacket, exhaled, and crossed the street. Security stopped me at the door. "Name?" one of them asked flatly. "Verity Draven," I said. His brows lifted, almost like he recognized the name but didn't believe it. I handed him the credential Orion had arranged. It scanned green. He stepped aside. Inside, the air was cool, almost too clean, smelling of glass and money. I passed through the hall where people murmured in pockets of light. Some noticed me, some pretended not to, but all of them watched. The carpet felt longer than it should have. My shoes made soft clicks that echoed through the hush between camera flashes. I smiled just enough to be unreadable. As I reached the main ballroom, I remembered what Tamsin said that morning. Once you step in front of those cameras, everything you say becomes evidence, so choose your truth wisely. And tonight, truth was all I had left. The lights dimmed. A voice echoed over the speakers, Orion's voice. He began with the usual formalities, thanking sponsors, honoring guests, acknowledging innovation and legacy. I stayed in the shadowed edge of the ballroom, waiting for my cue. Then he paused. His eyes scanned the audience, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly. "Before we continue," he said, "there's someone here tonight who deserves recognition far beyond the pages of any program." A ripple moved through the crowd. I saw my father's back straighten. My brother leaned toward him, whispering something sharp. "Tonight," Orion continued, "we welcome the woman who built the foundation you all profit from, the real architect. The co-founder you tried to erase, Mrs. Verity Draven." For 1 second, the entire room stopped breathing. Then came the gasps, the murmurs, the cameras flashing like lightning. I stepped forward, my heels clicking on the marble floor, every step deliberate. My father's face froze. My brother's eyes went wide. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, half covering what looked like fear or guilt. Applause began, scattered at first, hesitant, then stronger. I reached the stage as Orion extended a hand toward me. "Thank you," I said quietly, taking the microphone. It's strange to be welcomed back to a place I was told I didn't belong. The screens behind us flickered on. I clicked the remote. Two blueprints appeared side by side. Mine, marked with my original watermark, and the altered version they had used. Gasps again. Then murmurs. "These," I said, pointing to the left screen, "are the designs I created, authenticated, time-stamped, and archived. And these," I gestured to the right, "are the versions distributed after my name was removed. The edits were not clerical errors. They were deliberate acts of exclusion." I flipped to the next slide. Emails, internal memos, timestamps, each line tightening the air in the room. "You claimed I abandoned the project," I continued. "But the documents show otherwise. You shifted funds. You reassigned authorship. You erased a decade of work in less than a week." I turned toward the audience. "You erased me from your stage," I said, calm and slow. "But I kept the blueprints." A hush fell heavy over the room. My father's jaw was rigid. Gideon's complexion had gone pale, his confidence draining. The crowd could feel it, the balance changing. Then, suddenly, the screen flickered again. Another document loaded without my prompting. I looked at Orion. He gave a subtle nod. It was a scanned letter, handwritten, faded around the edges. I knew that handwriting instantly. It was my father's. I read it silently first, then aloud. "Upon my retirement, controlling interest shall pass to Verity Draven to ensure continuity and integrity of design." People gasped. The date was old, 15 years ago. Then the next page appeared. A revision. The signature was different, sloppier. The date 5 years later. It stated that control would transfer to Gideon instead. The room erupted in whispers. Someone near the front said, "That's forgery." Cameras zoomed in on the screen, snapping photos of the letterhead and signature. Tamsin's team had already verified it, embedded digital stamps for authenticity. This was the smoking gun, the betrayal carved in his own handwriting. I looked at my father. He wasn't moving, just staring at the letter like it was something he'd never seen before. My mother looked down, eyes wet. My brother turned toward him, his voice trembling as he hissed, "You told me she signed off on it." "She did," my father snapped, but his voice cracked halfway through the lie. The crowd's energy shifted completely. The tension broke into something sharper. Outrage, disbelief, whispers of scandal. Reporters started moving toward the stage, microphones raised. I took a breath. "This isn't about vengeance," I said. "It's about truth, about the hands that built this company being written out of its story." Orion's voice came over the speakers again, firm. "The documents you've seen tonight are verified by independent counsel and time-stamped under federal chain of custody. The truth is now public record." My father tried to speak, but the noise drowned him out. I turned to him one last time. "You didn't just take my name," I said. "You took the future I built." "But the thing about foundations, you can't destroy them without bringing the whole house down." I handed the mic back to Orion and stepped off the stage. The crowd was still buzzing, cameras flashing, people turning toward each other with disbelief and speculation. As I walked through the backstage corridor, I heard my father's voice calling after me, angry, desperate. I didn't stop. The sound of it faded behind the heavy doors. Outside, the night air felt colder. I paused under the glare of the marquee lights, taking in the chaos I had just unleashed. In that moment, I didn't just reclaim my name, I tore open their lies. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The war had just begun. The morning light crept through the blinds like a slow confession. I hadn't slept much after the gala. The adrenaline was still in my veins, the memory of faces, flashes, and whispered disbelief playing on a loop in my mind. But now the house was quiet. No ringing phones, no cameras outside. just silence. It wasn't the hostile kind that used to make my chest tighten. It was emptier, calmer, the kind of silence that makes you realize how much noise you used to live with. I made a pot of coffee and stood barefoot in the kitchen, staring at the same window where I'd once planned how to fight them. Now I didn't have to. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. "You were right." That was all it said. No greeting, no punctuation, no explanation. I set it down beside the sink and let it be. I'd spent enough of my life waiting for more words from her. In the drawer by my desk was the family photo I'd taken down months ago. It still sat there, face down, half buried beneath unopened mail. I pulled it out, looked at the frozen smiles, and wondered if I'd ever hang it again. Maybe not. Maybe closure doesn't always mean reconciliation. Maybe it just means knowing where not to return. The next morning, I drove to the office. The building looked different, though nothing had changed. Same glass, same logo, same polished floors. Maybe it was me that changed. The receptionist greeted me as Ms. Draven, voice careful but respectful. HR and PR were already busy, rebranding the company as transparent and values-driven. When I stepped into the boardroom, every conversation stopped. Some faces were warm, most were cautious. I didn't come for revenge. I came to rebuild. "We're not cleaning up the past to hide it," I said, setting my folder down. "We're cleaning it up so we can move forward without rot under the foundation." A few nodded. Others kept their eyes down. 2 board members announced resignations before lunch. My brother didn't appear at all. His office was emptied quietly, the nameplate removed without ceremony. That afternoon, I met with the design team, mostly young engineers and interns who had only heard fragments of what happened. I opened my original product files, the ones buried for years. "This is where it started," I told them, "and this is where it begins again." A quiet girl near the back, no older than 23, raised her hand. "How did you survive all that?" she asked. I smiled. "Because I built it. And when you build something with your own hands, it remembers you, even when people forget." Later that night, when the building emptied, I stayed behind. My office still carried faint traces of my father's cologne from years ago. I opened the small wall safe behind the painting, one they never found. Inside was an old envelope sealed in wax. The handwriting was my grandfather's. I sat down and opened it carefully. "Verity," it began, "power without understanding value is a curse. The ones who inherit without gratitude will lose faster than they gained. True legacy is earned, not handed down." Beneath the letter was a deed, a property in the Texas Hill Country, transferred to my name years ago. The note attached read, "For the child who shows grit, not just bloodline." I drove there 2 days later. The road curved through quiet plains and fields of cedar. When I stepped out, the air smelled like dust and wild grass. The land stretched wide, golden and calm. I kicked off my shoes and let the dirt press cool against my feet. It wasn't wealth. It wasn't inheritance. It was space, the kind you fill with new beginnings. I stood there for a long time, the breeze moving through my hair, and felt something I hadn't in years. Freedom, unowned, unearned, just there. This wasn't about reclaiming. It was about releasing. Weeks later, I launched a new initiative, a grant for women-led startups, named after my grandmother's maiden name, Evelyn Cole. She was the one who once told me, "When they close the door, build your own room." At the dedication ceremony, the air was bright, the crowd full of young founders with hope in their eyes. My parents weren't there, and for the first time, I didn't wish they were. Their names weren't on the plaque either. I didn't erase them. I just didn't need them there anymore. As I stepped off the stage, the applause faded behind me. I walked toward the sunlight spilling across the floor, feeling lighter, taller. Not because I had something to prove, but because the weight was finally gone. Forgiveness doesn't always mean returning. Sometimes it's just the quiet decision to move forward without carrying their shadows. That night, I sat on the porch of the Hill Country house. The stars were sharp against the dark sky, the land still, the crickets steady. I thought of the years I'd fought to be seen by them and how it took losing everything for me to finally see myself clearly. They built a company. I built a legacy.